Well, I'm delighted today to be here at Stationers' Hall in the City of London, where I'm speaking to James Ramsden and Sandra Louw from Trident Trust. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here.
So, delighted to be working again with Trident Trust on the dinner this evening. Are you looking forward to the event?
Yes, as ever, it's a really good opportunity to see friends, see colleagues, and also see people that we haven't met before. An opportunity to talk and see what's going on in the industry and where we can help each other in collaboration.
Fantastic. And Sandra, it was great to see you in Geneva back in May. Are you a frequent visitor to London? Do you enjoy coming over here?
Absolutely love it every time I come, yes. And it's great to see you again so soon again.
We recorded a really interesting discussion which looked at Swiss trusteeship. For those who didn't catch that conversation, it'd be great to hear some of the sort of key headlines and then just really to bring in James about why you think this Swiss trust regime is going to be very interesting for the business as we go. But Sandra, perhaps we could start with you with some of the headlines and how you're seeing things have changed and what advisors need to know, really.
Sure. Swiss trustees have become regulated, is the headline.
Yeah.
Trident already has, of course, 14 other jurisdictions where we provide trustee services, but for us it's a very complementary offering to the rest of our offering around the group. It's a really good development for Switzerland. It really improves the quality of trustee services. It provides consumer protection. But most important, it was a decision that was driven by client demand. Being able to provide the services right where clients come to bank, where they are coming for the other professional services already as well. But within the Trident group, it's really, really complementary. And James and me, for example, here already work together on a couple of cases.
Yeah, James, I mean, perhaps you could tell us more about commercially how you think now this will fit in and benefit you.
I think commercially, it's a good thing. It's a bit big. The regulation is a good thing because if I take Jersey as an example, then one of the things that Jersey is recognised for, aside from good trust law, is actually a strong and robust regulatory regime. And clients value that. And they value those protections, particularly in the world we live in today. Not this morning, we were having a conversation with a private client lawyer, and that was the point that they made for them, that they saw that the regulation of trustees in Switzerland was a step forward, was an advancement.
There is a flight to quality, isn't there, in the trust business? There's been so much change in recent period, but, really the jurisdictions that stand out, like the Channel Islands, like Switzerland, are ahead of the market in that respect, and that just does give the advantage.
They are, and they sit in complement with Singapore and for our Asia piece. And then also, when you look further afield, if you go west into Caribbean for some things, and then also into North America. So I think very much for us, we see it as the next logical piece of the jigsaw puzzle.
And just zooming out and looking at the Trident group, I mean, how do you sort of position the group? What are some of the key sort of strengths and competencies?
The key thing for the group is its independence.
Yeah.
The group's been around for 45 years, still bears the same name. And today it's independently owned. Our founders set up an employee ownership trust in 2019. So for the 1,200 people that work for the group, it means that we have a very stable long-term ownership dynamic, which sets us apart from many of our peers who equally have an international reach, but inevitably will go through ownership changes by the nature of how they're structured today.
Whereas you're more aligned and stable, given that.
Very much so, yeah. We have a long-term view, and I think that for our founders, that stewardship approach was really important, and clients value that.
And Sandra, for you, I mean, the independence of being a trustee, I mean, what does it mean for you and the service you can deliver for clients?
As James already mentioned, it is a real differentiating factor for us within this industry. There are a few other privately owned trustee companies. There are a few other really global providers, but very few have this intersection and this combination of being both privately owned and international. What it means for our clients is, again, as James has mentioned, is this knowledge that, first of all, we tend to work with private clients. They identify with privately held trustee companies. They have the longevity. It's an extremely personal business we're in. Clients divulge very personal information. I think it's one of the most important aspects of Trident is the fact that we are privately owned and that we will be around and that we understand what our clients are dealing with as well.
And that you can maintain service levels, because that's what often happens in the change of ownership, isn't it? Inevitably, to generate the returns required, service levels drop as headcounts reduce.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that makes us a little bit different. And perhaps, we should shout about it a bit more than we do. And certainly we're trying to. We have a new website coming actually in the next month, so that will do a better job of really identifying our independence and actually the stability that comes with being around for 45 years. And with 1,200 colleagues in the group, then very much we're part of a growing family.
Yeah.
And if I may add, the global presence, we are here for our clients today. We talk about the longevity of our staff, but our clients are thinking 1 or 2 generations ahead as well. And our global presence means that wherever life may take them into the next generation, we will probably have a presence and that seamless ability to work with them and work close to them geographically into the next generation as well, which is extremely comforting to clients.
Because inevitably, wealth is international, isn't it? Cross-border in nature, children educated and work and live overseas,
Absolutely.
invest cross-border.
And families evolve.
Yeah.
Everyone's family situation evolves. And wealthy families, as you say, education, marriage, work, takes people to different parts of the world. And one of the strengths that we have is an ability to recognise where a client may start in Jersey, but they may end up working with an office on the other side of the world because the client's place of work or residence changes. So it's about an ability to evolve and accompany the clients on the journey.
And particularly where clients are coming into complex or higher tax jurisdictions, like the UK has got tax efficiency, but it's very complex, or the US. There's lots of traps, isn't there? So to have a joined up team around you is essential.
And I think from our perspective, we see it very much as a partnership for the professionals that we work with.
Yeah.
I describe it sometimes sticking to our knitting.
Yeah.
That we're professional trustees, we're professional fiduciaries, corporate administrators, funds. But we have to partner. We have to partner with the tax, the legal, the account. We have to partner with those. And we do our best work in partnership with the other professional teams. Because then, for all of us, we do our best for our client that way.
And I imagine those intermediaries will appreciate the long-term vision as well, as you're saying, on your ownership. No surprises. An introduction for a key client of theirs is in safe hands and, has got a stable position going forward.
No,
that means a lot.
Exactly. It does mean a lot.
And just looking at some, I suppose, the global picture, there's, something as a business we follow a huge amount because it's reflected in appetite for our events. The Middle East at the moment is very big for us. A lot of people interested in tapping into the activity that's there. What do you see in the Middle East region?
It's been busy for a number of years, but we see professionalisation for families. There's changes with corporate tax being introduced in the UAE. There's changes to the company regime in Saudi. And I think what that's driving is a recognition that business and personal assets, which historically were probably intermingled in structures, need now to perhaps be separated. We're also seeing the education of children internationally now bringing ideas back and their parents being much more open to embracing the ideas and embracing that professionalisation and having more clarity on how things should be done.
Good governance is an important discussion, isn't it, in the region, and more of the professionals on the ground in Dubai, I know, are tackling these topics.
Very much so. It's a strong part. And that pace of change or that journey is very much about the family. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about the pace that the family will want to move at and what's right for them. So I think we've just got to be receptive to understanding that not everyone will necessarily want to end up at the same place, and nor that's to say is that right for everyone.
And there's a lot of innovation also on the ground in Dubai, there's, the UAE, new foundation laws, and there's lots of change, and that can foster a spirit of collaboration.
And we see that particularly. We see that in collaboration. We have a lot of collaboration with our Dubai office. DIFC foundations are very popular, and we do a lot of work there. A lot of regional and domestic assets are put in there. But then we see the international side, and the international side is where we see collaboration. It might be Jersey, it might be Guernsey, it might be Switzerland, or elsewhere in the group, Singapore. We see very much a collaboration piece where what the client is looking for is a joined up solution, whereby a firm can ideally understand them in the round and provide as much as possible a seamless service.
And there's very strong ties between the Middle East and Switzerland, isn't there, Sandra? I mean, what do you observe of clients who are taking services in the Middle East? And plenty of time in Geneva in the summertime, the key families enjoy spending time in the country. I mean, what do you see?
You're right. When we see the link back to Switzerland, often, although they live and work in the Middle East, they would have banking relations with London, with Geneva, with Switzerland. And so it makes sense from a financial point of view that they then take their trustees in Switzerland as well. Having said that, James, our Dubai office, ourselves, we work together quite often because what we do see as a trend in the Middle East is, as James has mentioned, the separation of business and family assets, but also the separation of their onshore and offshore assets, if I can put it that way, that you use this combination of local structures within the Middle East, within Dubai, for the local assets, and then that you look for your offshore assets to be structured, and then the choice about where you place those assets driven by where are your financial ties, where are your family members, what makes sense within the wider setup of the family.
And the strongest logic, okay, that will win out, rather than what's available.
What's right for them, what's practical for them.
For us, it's actually very much a case about being agnostic. It's about it's about listening, firstly. Really important. Listen to the client, ask questions, understand, and then we may go in thinking, okay, this is something for Jersey. Then actually the conversation leads you to say, well, actually, no, I'm not talking about that anymore. I'm actually talking about something for, actually, you need Switzerland, or you need something at another part of the world. And it's about an ability for us to do what is right for the client. And so very much with the senior team that we have globally, it's about the ability to represent the wider group.
And what about looking further east? I mean, you've got a very established presence in Singapore. What kind of trends do you see from there?
Singapore is a really interesting place. We've been in Singapore for just over 10 years. Actually, it might be 11 years now, in fact. And the office has grown substantially in that time. And when we think, a lot of that growth has come from Southeast Asia, but really what's popular right now, Singapore family offices. The assembly office regime has really taken
hold. The growth
hold.
in numbers of family offices in the last 12 months even has rocketed up, hasn't it?
That's right. So I understand, I was talking to the managing director of our Singapore office beginning of last week, and he said there's about 700 to 800 today. Now, if you want a new one, potentially you're waiting up to 12 months to get all the necessary government approvals. So that of itself speaks for the popularity. Singapore isn't the cheapest place in the world to live. He was complaining, it's certainly driving up residential rental prices and
There's
property
limited
prices.
Land, isn't there?
Absolutely. So this is always a problem. Jersey suffers a similar thing. That this is a problem when you live, when you're on in a place where there's constrained space. Supply and demand really does come to bear.
And what about in the funds business in Singapore? I know that there's a very active, obviously, asset management community there. I mean, what do you see on
There is.
the funds
very,
piece?
very much again, the fund business is, cryptos of all things is really popular. Singapore is a hub for that. But that links a lot into what we do out of the US, our Atlanta team, and also with Malta. But also more traditional fund management services as well, but very much with an Asia focus.
Okay, interesting. And we were in Jersey last week. We had 180 guests down for dinner, lots of London intermediaries and intermediaries coming from elsewhere. Seems lots of interest and opportunity in business still in established centres like
There
Jersey.
is, very much so. I think some of the talk now is already turning to the next election in the UK. And what that might mean, and potentially changes that might or might not come along to the non-dom regime. And I think that's a discussion point between advisors and trustees, but clients now are starting to ask, and I know a number of certainly advisors have already got mandates from clients to start thinking about, well, okay, what might this mean? It is crystal ball stuff, though, to say, well, what might happen?
Residency and mobility is a key top area, isn't it? And because governments are trying to work out how to protect their tax base, but people are more mobile than ever, particularly business owners.
And I think very much so. And what's been interesting is that actually many number of countries have actually copied the concept of Britain's non-dom regime, because ultimately they're all chasing those highly mobile, wealthy individuals that will come, that will invest in the country, that will set up and develop businesses, that will employ people and indirectly put money into the economy. Britain's challenge is how it reconciles that position in the new post-Brexit world.
And just looking at other topics or themes that are often addressed in the industry, like looking at the next gen clients coming through and how they're different from the former generation perhaps, or what do you observe in terms of a new client base coming through, the type of client you're dealing with?
New money, if you like, the ones that have tech and such like, very much we've got to make sure we understand them and engage with them in the right way. Because, and in some respects, it's how we also hire staff as well. For when those youngsters come through, they communicate somewhat differently. We wish sometimes that they would perhaps pick up the phone a bit more often.
Yes.
Because some of the old ways are still actually very good for speaking to people. But we need to blend, ultimately, this adoption of technology with some of the old skills, and because certain things are best dealt with face to face, are best dealt with in a conversation. And I think it's not the way some of our youngsters grow up now. They're so used to just sort of fast communications, sometimes with a lack of formality, which it can be dangerous in our industry, in the professional world. And ultimately, clients are buying our expertise, and they're not buying widgets. They're actually buying expertise, technical expertise. And with complicated situations, we do still need to be able to consider and take our time. So how we balance that up in terms of style of communication and the fact we're in a much more on-demand world where clients expect us to be more responsive. And, the fact when I first started out as a junior, the fax was the quick way to communicate.
Yeah.
And
now it's WhatsApp, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
You're under immediate pressure.
Yeah. So it's about making sure that we communicate with clients and we explain the times where actually what they want from us is something more complicated that will need time, that will need perhaps input from others. So the key thing is communicating that, managing those messages well.
I think another important aspect, there are these two parts to the next generation. The one is the next generation of wealth, which is starting to interact with us for creating structures. The other part of the coin is, as trustees, you're involved over a long period of time with the family, and you have old structures where the patriarch, matriarch is no longer allowed, and starting to think about passing.
The great wealth transfer.
Exactly, the wealth transfer. Yeah. That's exactly the industry we're in. So also having to constantly review, understand the family situation, and the way in which the next generation, as James has said, differs in the way that they engage with us. But also you may need to have a shift in how you are going to invest, what type of investments they're interested in, the types of investments that the next generation is interested in might differ from what the previous generation was doing. And we need to adapt, but we need to understand, and we need to engage and communicate in whichever way that engagement communication looks. That part stays the same, but how we do it might change a little bit.
Yeah, and very much so. And drawing on that, when you think, sometimes the youngsters go, well, James was dad's person, James was dad's trustee, and so how do we then maintain and build upon that connection when dad is no longer around? And that's something that's really important. So for us, it's also drawing in some of our younger members of staff to build relationships with those next generations.
Yes. Don't keep it like that.
Absolutely.
Build the team.
because there will come a point in time when those older relationships, they will pass. So it's about, for us, trying to position that the next gen are brought in, they understand, they're educated, and some families do it much better. Others, it's just more of a challenge. So, and particularly when you think about family business, statistics are clear. There is about just over 35% of most family businesses transition from the first to the second generation. When you go from 2 to 3, it's about 11 or 12, and then after that, it drops to very low single digits, and that tells you something about the difficulties that families have in adapting over the generations. And really, the ones that stand out, that do it well, are often the ones that get communication right. And so we've got to play our part in that, in facilitating it, and also being with them on that journey.
Yeah.
The other part of it is family governance. We may not be the part of the invest or advisory circle that designs family governance, but we're an integral part of implementing it. But we also need to start to play a role more and more on which part of a structuring life cycle do I start to get some outside help and get family governance? Is the family wealth growing? Are the generations increasing? They were at the outset mom and dad with 2 children, and now there's a next generation, a next one, and each time it mushrooms out. What will their involvement be in the future? What are their options in the future? And partnering up with partners who do family governance,
and being part of that picture.
It's really interesting. I was just talking actually with the head of a family office that are doing some planning actually on Monday this week, and one of the things they're saying is, okay, we need to think about dispute resolution. We need to think about, okay, what happens if? Because we want to as much as possible try and create a framework within which issues between family members in the future will be resolved. So
ahead of the issue rearing its head.
Precisely. Or certainly ahead of it having to end up in court.
Yeah.
Because as much as we love all the lawyers we work with, really that's, ultimately, it costs a lot.
Yeah.
And
the stress it causes on the family as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, we want to work with them at the outset and avoid problems, not work with them at the end of the journey where the problems are already there. So.
And do you see family charters kind of documenting this, or is it more of a process? It doesn't have to be documented down, as it were, but it's just a case of.
Yes, it's a case of how it will fit in.
Yeah.
Some families are further along, and they've spent the time to document the charter, what's important, their values, and others, they're not quite there yet, and they might write it down, but the key thing in all this is that the entire family have got to subscribe to it and live it, so to speak. Because otherwise it just becomes a document you pay lip service to, and then if there is a dispute, it gets cast to one side.
Yeah, I was in a discussion with an advisor the other week, which was very interesting. He was saying, well, the document's fine, but then the patriarch passes away, and then effectively that document is, and then it leads to a dispute then amongst the family, because there wasn't the buy-in,
That's it. So the buy-in is really key. So family communication, education, understanding actually, the communication piece in the family is key, particularly between siblings and other generations, because it's amazing who, one sibling remembers that the other sibling stole their teddy when they were younger, and tore the arm off it, and they've never forgiven them for it. And when they're grown adults, those types of things that they come out. So it's about understanding really what the communication piece looks like, then getting so you do get a steer on, okay, what things are important to this family, particularly with families where there is a dominant matriarch or patriarch. Because what you tend to see is that whilst during their lifetime, everyone falls into line. They might have opinions of their own, but they're not necessarily being expressed as openly as they might be. And that is often where that can sow the seeds for disagreement between siblings and the next generations if actually they're all there isn't a forum to try and deal with those issues. And what you see is that you see breakups of family businesses and...
Yeah. Trying to find the right time to sell. When should a family business become a business family?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's only done by advisors sitting around the table, cool head, and saying,
yes.
Is this the right business to be in?
Yes.
And for the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is it now a business that the families have got skills in still?
No, very, very interesting. And just looking forward, I mean, is there anything coming up within the Trident Group that you're excited about, you're looking forward to? Is there anything in the sector that you think is any landmarks that are coming out that...
I think obviously what will be the next UK election, any changes of that,
yes.
are going to be very much of interest to the Crown dependencies.
Yeah.
We're seeing expansion in... other parts of the world. We're seeing expansion certainly in North America, so there'll be more to come on that in due course. Asia is a fantastic market, and it just continues to go from strength to strength, so that's nice. And very much the Middle East as well.
Yeah.
So I think when we think about those, they really are cornerstone businesses. Finally, I've forgotten India. India for some of our Asia team is really a market that, and Mauritius, that they want to, they think there's plenty of opportunity. Because if you think, very big population, and a very young working population in India. So therefore, good education, wealth generators.
Demographics on your side.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing, wealth generators, and they need support.
Fantastic.
For Trident in general, really what we're looking forward to and what we're quite excited about is where there is growth, we also make sure that we are there. India, you mentioned, we have people on the ground in India now as well.
Which
China,
is a challenging market, isn't it? It's not an easy market. You've got to be established in there. Yeah.
Correct. China as well. We don't have an office there, but we have people who understand the culture, the language, the clients, and work very closely then with our Asia teams. The Americas, we are expanding a lot in the Americas. As James has said, watch the page. And the Latin America as well, the same concept of having people on the ground closer to the existing client base, but equally able to interact with the lawyers and the professional advisors on the ground there as well. So for Trident, it's exciting times. There are so many opportunities around the world, but we're continuing on that path of going where our clients are, where they need us. And that is the theme that I think will continue.
Fantastic. James, Sandra, wonderful to talk to you today. Look forward to sharing this interview.
Pleasure.
It was a real pleasure.